Sometimes I feel like I'm just existing. I'm not really living. I'm only watching the time slip away. I've forgotten who I am in you. I'm not who I'm meant to be, no, no. I'm drifting farther away from my destiny.
Hello, my name is Gail Nordskog, and you are watching A Heart of Purpose. The reason I'm calling the show A Heart of Purpose is because I feel that people, if you have a purpose in life, you're going to live it with passion, and it's going to have a whole lot more meaning to yourself and to others. But there's a little twist in that. I feel like the main purpose in life is knowing God and serving Him and serving other people for His glory. So I have a guest today that's really, really interesting to me. I've known about her probably for about 10 years. And my passion is adoption and orphans and children in the foster care system. And I had heard about Nita Hanson, my guest, who went over to the Ukraine a number of years ago. And I want her to share her story, how she went over there on a short little mission trip and ended up staying there all these years and has an incredible work over there. So welcome, Nita Hanson. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Gail.
Why don't you share your story,
Okay.
how you ended up not wanting to be a missionary, first of all, but you were a very successful businesswoman, I understand, and somehow you ended up going on a mission trip.
Well, somehow the Lord got me to go on my first mission trip to the Philippines in '95, and that's when He broke my heart for people and really showed me I could not be the same person I was before. And then a few months after that, I went to the former Soviet Union, to Ukraine, for 3 weeks. And at that time, I knew I had to go back. And I had an opportunity to go back for 1 year with the team. So that's just how God got me over there.
Now, okay, you were a part of a church group that went over to the Ukraine?
When I went over to the Ukraine, I went over with the International School Project, which was to teach Christian morals and ethics to school teachers in the school system, and with government permission. And then the 1 year follow-up was to mentor those who had been there.
And what was your first reaction when you went? The Philippines is so different from the Ukraine.
Yeah, the Philippines, I just love the people. And I was really broken there, but I never felt called to go back. But the Ukraine, when I was there, I just knew that God was telling me to go back. And it's just an experience in my heart of just praying for God, please give this nation time to know you. You know their circumstance. And I couldn't stop praying, please, please. And I think there were 50 of us on the team, and they all told me, you have to go back. So everybody saw what was happening.
Let's kind of backtrack a little bit about your life. You were married, and that didn't work out. So there were some things happening. You were actually not a Christian. Is that correct?
Well, I went to church all my life, but I never really saw that it made a difference in my life, and I didn't see that it made a difference in the lives of my family. And then I went through a real crisis in my life where both my parents had brain cancer. And at the same time, I found out my daughter was on drugs, and my husband that I've been married to for 20 years, we separated. And so that was really a big crisis in my life. And
just one of those would have been a crisis.
Well, I felt like somebody just took the fabric of my life and ripped it in shreds and just threw it up in the wind. And I'd love to say that at that time I gave my life to Christ, but I didn't. I was still going to church at that point, and I walked away for about 9 years. And I decided to see what I could make of myself. So I went to school at night, worked during the day, and worked my way up to marketing manager in a small computer firm.
And that was right here in...
That was in the
area?
valley.
In the San Fernando Valley?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But at some point, all of a sudden, I just realized, I always used to have that empty feeling inside, like something was missing. And I was so busy, I didn't have time to feel that. But all of a sudden, I just remember one day, there I am again. I got that same empty feeling inside. And I've pretty much done everything I wanted to do, but it doesn't mean anything. So now what? And so I started going to church again. But I think it took me about 3 years before I finally found my way to the Lord. And that was reading a book that talked about giving your life to Christ, giving Him control. And I felt like an idiot because all those years I never did that. I didn't know I had to. And so then I took 2 days counting the costs. I was afraid that the Lord would ask me to give Him my family, and He would ask me to leave my community, and that He would send me to Africa because Africa was missions. And so it took me 2 days of just really, thinking, I don't know if I want to do that. And then finally I just said, I want you more than anything. I don't care what you take. And I give my life to you. And, I got up the next morning and it was like somebody had just put this hunger and fire inside for the Lord. And it's never gone out.
So do you feel that you used your business skills in what has transpired here in the Ukraine?
Certainly, I think God has used, some of
Those
I'm
talents.
a visionary. I've always been one that sees the big picture. And, to start a ministry or start anything, you've got to be able to see where it is you're going to go and why. And, just the general knowledge of, how to run an organization.
All right, now let's go back to the Ukraine. That first trip there, you went for 3 months.
3 weeks.
Oh, 3 weeks. And what was your purpose on that particular trip?
Basically just teaching teachers Christian morals and ethics, because when the Soviet system fell apart, they didn't have anything to replace that big void. And, that was God. The state was God. And so the students were just out of control. And so they actually cried out for help. And they were willing to let, us teach Christian morals and ethics to the teachers.
A lot of us, the Ukraine just seems so far away, and
It is.
can't even picture. Well, you would know, but you can't even picture what life would be like there. Can you give us a little bit of history? I'm sure a lot of us know that it was under communist.
Well, I'll give you just a quick rundown.
Okay.
I like to talk about in 1930 to 32, there was a man-made famine, and it was made by Stalin. And he wanted to break any independence the Ukraine had, and they still had these huge farms. So he made a new word called kulak, and a kulak was someone who owned things. And then he turned the people against each other. You were to report someone, and they came in and they either killed all the farmers or deported them to Siberia or someplace, and some of them actually escaped. But they tore apart the whole fabric of the country's whole history of how their economy. And then they started taking the food out. So
And this was just to get the people to surrender to the will of Stalin?
So there would be no independence whatsoever left. And then he started carrying the food out. So I like to tell people, if you just picture yourself, you're sitting in a farming area, and your kids are around the table, and you look out the window and there's abundance of food growing. And you look at your kids and they're all starving to death. And you know that you cannot go out there and pick that food, nor can your kids, because they'll be shot on the spot. And somewhere between 14 and 21 million people died.
Oh my goodness. And this was all
It was man-made,
arranged.
all arranged. At the height, I think, in Ukraine itself, there were like 25,000 people a day dying, and they just had the death trucks that came through. And it's something that was never even talked about. People were afraid to talk about it. And now they're been beginning to talk about it the last few years.
I've actually seen some footage on that.
It's pretty horrible.
Yes, really horrible. So, okay, after
And
that,
then just
what
a few
happened?
years after that, World War II, and Ukraine was the country of entry for Germany when they came in to invade the Soviet Union. So when the Soviet Union found out they were coming, they went in and burned all the crops, killed all the animals so that the Germans couldn't subsist. But what about the people? Nobody cared.
So they just left the people. And
They lost another close to 10 million people. So you just think, here's a country smaller than Texas. You could put it and a couple of our New England states in there. And somewhere between 14 and 21 million people died in a 15-year period.
Oh,
That's pretty horrible.
It is horrible.
And so there's this culture of hopelessness. There's no hope. Nothing's going to change. And, you know, I went over there as an American. You know, we have a particular gift. We have hope. And I can spot an American a mile away because of how we walk, how we carry ourselves, just a look in our face of I can. And, you know, whenever there's something wrong over there and I say, well, you know, what can we do? It's like, what can you do? It's life in Ukraine.
So even today, they still have a hopelessness.
They always have the, you know, the hand is out saying, somebody, please come and help us. And they're highly, highly educated, very intelligent, very innovative, very creative people. So I'm hoping with my life that maybe I can show them that they can.
Okay.
With God, we can do all things.
And I think you're showing that, at least some of the things that you've been able to accomplish there on behalf of these people. And what I like is the fact that you don't just go over and give a handout, but you're trying to give them a way out and a hope and that hand up so they can take care of themselves and do things for themselves. During that 3-week period that you were there, what happened that you knew you needed to go back again?
Well, God says we know, my sheep know my voice, and I just knew inside, better than I knew my name, that I had to go back. There was no doubt. I didn't want to go back now, but I had to go back. So I did.
How soon after that?
I went back, let's see, I came home the end of October, and I was there at the middle of July.
And did you sell your home here, or?
I rented it out and I gave away everything I had, which is kind of interesting because I only intended to be there for a year. That's been a very long year, by the way.
What year was that?
1996.
Okay. And did you have a purpose when you went there? Did you know what you were going to set out to do?
Yes, I was going there to teach the Bible to the people who'd been to the 3-week conferences.
Okay.
That was our main purpose. But I was there probably less than a few days when I said to one of my interpreters, do you have an orphanage here in town? And I don't know where those words came from. Well, I know now that the Lord put that in my heart. And so we went to our first orphanage. And that really broke my heart. That was just seeing those kids and the look in their eyes. No child should have that kind of look in their eyes of just pure hopelessness and pain. And that's what you see. They may look on the outside like normal kids, but they're not.
Right.
So that led to the next orphanage, which had a lot of handicapped kids. And then the third orphanage was the boys' house for the mentally retarded. So I was thoroughly broken at that point. And then I began like a 10-day period where every time I walked outside, someone would either fall down in front of me or there would be someone lying on the street or the sidewalk, and people would just walk around them like they didn't exist. And as a Christian, I just felt so helpless. How do I just walk by somebody laying on the street and not do something? But I couldn't speak the language. And if I tried to get a Ukrainian, they would just do this, which means they've been drinking, and go by.
Oh, okay. So and do you think that was the case in many situations?
Sometimes it was, but I found the last one I found was a woman laying on the street, and she was burning up with fever. And yes, she was dirty, and she probably had been drinking, but she was sick, and nobody would stop. So I finally went in and bought a loaf of bread, and I brought it back, and I tucked it in her arm. And then I'm a visionary. God gives me pictures. So in the morning in prayer, I began to see myself, and I'm standing in front of the Lord, and I have this little handicapped baby with a head about this big, and he's 3 months old, and I'm holding him. And I had the hand of this woman,